Forza Blaugrana re, utrire, zanzi, zanzanzanzanzanzan, Barca, Barca, Barca. Oh yeah. I'm singing that song because Blaugrana are in action, right? In the Champions League, round of 16 clash against Napoli, the Italian champions Napoli. So the first leg will take place at the Diego Maradona Stadium in Naples, Italy, right? The home ground of Napoli, right? We'll get into details with regards to that later onwards, but I want us to first touch on the fact that we did have two Champions League games that took place last night, right? One being with the runaway Dutch leaders, PSV taking on 1996 and 2013 runners-up Borussia Dortmund. And the other one was Inter Milan taking on Atlético Madrid at San Siro. So this game between PSV and Borussia Dortmund obviously resulted in a 1-1 stalemate, right? And it was very controversial, to say the least, because the controversial Luke de Jong penalty was the one that actually rescued a draw for PSV against Dortmund, right? And Borussia Dortmund were then left, to bemoan, a dose of, VAR controversy as PSV Eindhoven fought back to actually earn a 1-1 draw, in their first leg of their Champions League last 16 tie at the Philips Stadion, right? So what actually took place in this game, it was a very interesting game of football to actually, observe, because it was pretty much of a balanced game, to say the least, right? And that's exactly what we expected, because this is Champions League knockout football. So you don't expect anything less of an entertaining game of football, right? And what we saw like Borussia Dortmund forward and erstwhile, written man, Donyell Malen, haunted his former team in the first minute. But, Luke de Jong's contentious, penalty saw Peter Bosch's side level the tie. And visiting head coach, Edin Terzic, had to make a last-minute altercation to his first starting 11, at the Philips Stadion, as number one goalkeeper Gregor Kobel, appeared to sustain an injury in the warm-up, allowing Alexander Meyer to actually come in for an unforeseen start. So basically, that was actually a forced change that came out of nowhere. And it provided the reserve goalkeeper Alexander Meyer, a chance to actually impress and to actually, make his debut in the UEFA Champions League for Borussia Dortmund. And from that particular moment in time, we saw Meyer's opposite number, Walter Benitez, would be forced into the first meaningful save of the contest, 15 minutes in, by keeping out the low drive from Malen, just 1 minute moment before Malik Tillman fired wide in an end-to-end start, to the battle between PSV as well as Borussia Dortmund. So it was an incredible battle, to say the least. It was very entertaining and it was end-to-end stuff, like I just mentioned. And you could tell that a goal was going to come. You just couldn't tell that which team was actually going to find the back of the net first, right? Because from that particular moment in time, we saw Borussia Dortmund, they soon began to actually pepper the PSV goal, with shots, though the German Giants, they got their reward in the 24th minute through Malen, right, who worked the yard into space, in the right hand side of the box, tried his luck, saw his strike, take a nick off, former Barcelona right back, Serginho Dest on its way into the near post via the crossbar. So that's how the first goal of the game came, and that's what actually made the contest come into action. It livened up the entire game between, these two giants, right? And Malen then toned down his celebrations against his former employers, rightfully so, who should have been, back on level terms just 4 minutes later. But, Tillman, again, was guilty of another, agonizing miss, heading wide from Joey Verman's pinpoint free kick. And then we saw PSV's wastefulness was hampering their hopes of pegging, a comeback against Borussia Dortmund. But, Meyer's gloves were finally tested in the 40th minute, as Ismail Salabri, tried to, find a gap, at the near post, but he just could not beat the goalkeeper. And the rod written, would make their pressure tell 11 minutes into the second half, albeit, in a highly, controversial circumstances, as Mats Hummels was penalized for a foul on Tillman inside the area. Although replays actually did show that, the Borussia Dortmund defender made contact with the ball, but the VAR room spotted Hummels, scrap Tillman's shin, allowing Dion to actually stroke home from the spot. Mayer guessed right, but his stretch was very futile, right? And again, that was very controversial to say the least, because the tie did remain on knife edge, as the dying, embers approached. But unfortunately, neither side was able to take the bull by its horns, and the draw was a fair result for both of these teams, even if Terrich's men, were irked by a perceived sense of injustice. And before the return fixture at in Dortmund, which will take place on March the 13th, PSV will actually be traveling to PEC Zwolle in Saturday's Eredivisie encounter, while Dortmund are at home to Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga in 5 days' time. So, very controversial game of football indeed. And yeah, man, unlucky for Borussia Dortmund. They were just unlucky. So, in the second game of the round of 16 fixtures that took place last night, right, in the Champions League, it was actually a repeat of remember the UEFA Super Cup, right? The UEFA Super Cup, was it? Yeah, it was 2010. Yeah, I guess it was 2010-11 season when actually winners of the Champions League, Inter Milan, took place against the winners of the Europa League back then, which was Atletico Madrid. And Atletico Madrid came out victorious in that encounter, right, to clinch the UEFA Super Cup. So basically, this particular Champions League tie between, the Spanish side, Atletico Madrid, as well as last season's finalists Inter Milan, it was actually a repeat of the UEFA Super Cup that took place all those years ago, right? And I remember Diego Forlan did feature for both these sides, and he actually won that trophy with actually Atletico Madrid. So the score ended as a 1-0 victory. It could have been more, but I think credit must go to Atletico's great defensive performance once again, because it was actually the halftime substitute Marko Arnautovic who actually made the difference at the San Siro, right? And the halftime substitute Marko Arnautovic, he's the one who actually earned, Inter a narrow first leg win over Atletico Madrid, because now Inter Milan, luckily they beat Atletico Madrid 1-0 in the opening installment of the UEFA Champions League round of 16, thanks to Marko Arnautovic's goal 11 minutes from time. So there were a lot of key moments from this particular encounter. You understand, to say the least. So many key moments, right? Martinez's header, was Martinez's header. It was actually the first effort that was on target from Inter Milan. Arnautovic blasted his effort over the bar, and Arnautovic was able to actually put the ball in the back of the net finally after Lautaro Martinez's shot was saved. So there were so many key moments in this particular encounter between Inter Milan as well as Atletico Madrid. But yes, in as much as Arnautovic was the difference maker, it was a very cagey opening half hour, and was perhaps, to be expected in a tie pitting Serie A's best defense against Diego Simeone's side, which remains, dogged, despite a degree of, added adventure this term, right? Indeed, it was, a misplaced Atletico Madrid pass which actually presented Inter with the best chance of the first half, as Marcus Thuram, squared the ball for Lautaro Martinez, who failed to make a firm connection on the shot that it was actually deflected behind for a corner kick. It was actually very interesting, to say the least. I mean, that combination between Martinez as well as Marcus Thuram has actually come to great fruition, for the Inazzurri, this season, because these guys have literally, taken the Serie A by storm, and what a great asset, what a great signing Marcus Thuram has been for Inter Milan, right? Because Martinez and Thuram both tested Jan Oblak, either side of that opportunity, but the visiting goalkeeper was well placed to actually make brilliant saves to actually deny the home side from actually opening the scoring in the first half. And we also saw the fact that, Inter Milan were the ones that dominated possession, unsurprisingly, because they are the home team, and we obviously know Diego Simeone's game plan. Whenever he plays away from home in the Champions League knockout stages, he always goes with that kind of tactic of saying, you know what, let us defend, right? And then in the second leg, we'll actually go for it, right? So we saw Marko Arnautovic, the goal scorer, the match winner. How it actually happened is that he replaced Marcus Thuram at halftime, and he made quite an impact. The Austrian might, have broken the deadlock even sooner, but, at full stretch was unable to meet, the direct, Federico Di Marco's cross on target. Though Samuel Lino, soon had Atletico Madrid's first hint of a chance, momentum was now firmly with the hosts, and their new front pairing, Arnautovic, had an opportunity to capitalize on a clear-cut goal-scoring opportunity for the home side, but he blazed his effort over the bar, and that was a great, neat 1-2 with Martinez, whose header was also then too close to All Black, right? And Inter Milan's number 10, Lautaro Martinez, was once again denied by, the Atletico Madrid goalkeeper after breaking free 2 minutes later, but this time Arnautovic was on hand to turn in the rebound, irregardless of the fact that, Lino attempted clearance of the line. But, Alvaro Morata's glancing header, so nearly restored parity. Although the hosts, did enough to actually secure a much important home victory going into the second leg encounter at the Wanda Metropolitano in Madrid in the next 2 weeks or so. So, look, I mean, it was a great victory for Inter Milan, right? But it could have been more. They could have scored more goals, to say the least. They literally could have scored more goals. They had so many chances to actually put this game to bed, right? So they have themselves to actually blame for their wastefulness in front of goal. Because if you think about it, right, what if Atletico Madrid win by 2-0? We might underestimate Atletico Madrid. Yes, momentum might be on the side of Inter Milan going into that second leg encounter, at the Wanda Metropolitano. But, you can never underestimate Atletico Madrid. Remember, these guys were the finalists in 2014 and 2016. So they also have as much of a point to actually prove in this competition. And as you observe Marko Arnautovic's performance, I think he was the one who actually changed, Inter's approach to the game in the second half. He made some good movement between the lines. He was actually able to create chances. Plus, he scored the only goal, right? And, after a tight opening period, it was a very convincing second half display from Inter Milan. The tie now remains wide open, but they have now actually created enough chances after a break, to actually warrant taking a lead to the Spanish capital in 3 weeks' time. And Jan Sommer's 21st clean sheet of the season underlines Inter's defensive solidarity, which, is sure to stand them in good chance, to actually get a good result at the Stadio de Metropolitano, in Madrid, in the next few weeks or so. But yet again, if you look on the side of Atletico Madrid, right, their performance, I can actually say it was not really much to say. There's not really much to drive from their performance because, they often struggle away from home in the Champions League. They often do struggle away from home, and it did prove again. It was not really a great display from, the 2016 runners-up, because it was overall like a fairly balanced game. But Inter did show more creativity throughout. And Simeone's side, will actually be thankful to the trail that, will actually be thankful for the fact that they only trailed by 1 goal, going into the second leg. And, they failed to actually create anything of, real note at the San Siro. And I'm sure they will actually be relieved that, they still have everything to play for and that they still stand a massive chance of actually getting back into this encounter. right, into this particular encounter against Inter Milan at home. Again, look, the man who made the difference, Marko Arnautovic, what a great goal it was. He was just in the right place at the right time, but he missed a lot of opportunities. But luckily, he did make the difference. He came on to make a difference, and that's exactly what he did. The third chance that came to him, he actually took it. And, I'm actually happy that he was actually able to put the back, to find the back of the net finally, right? And this particular encounter actually leaves the home side in good feelings, for an extraordinary performance of the lads against a great opponent, and, I'm sure Inter Milan must be kicking themselves, and they must be regretting the fact that they only won the game by 1 goal, because it will be an intense match day, in Madrid, right? And to say the least, as a spectator sitting back, I'm actually happy for Marko Arnautovic that he actually got the goal, and this is actually a massive confidence booster for the Austrian, because you can see that he's clearly working well. He's actually gelling in this Inter Milan squad, right? But yeah, they could have done better, man. They could have scored more goals, because look, on the side of Atletico Madrid, I'm sure that they still must be fancying their chances, because basically this particular match, it still leaves them with, good feelings for an extraordinary performance of the lads, against a particular, a formidable opponent of Inter Milan, right? And I can sincerely tell you that now Atletico Madrid will actually fancy their chances of getting back, with home ground advantage being on their side in the second leg, right? But you look at this, Inter Milan, now they've suffered. They took the right amount of risks and created clear chances, but, luckily they were just mature and intelligent, right? They were just struggling to find the back of the net. Eventually they did, but they should have found the back of the net, because now, Inter Milan have failed. Remember, they failed to find the net only once. You understand? In 34 games in all competitions this season. And this was, Inter Milan's 9th successive victory in all competitions, right? And last season's runners-up have now only lost 1 of their last 14 UEFA Champions League games, right? Meaning they've won 8 and they've drawn 5. So this was Atletico Madrid's first defeat in the competition this season, having, finished the group stages like unbeaten, right? And now Atletico Madrid also failed to master a single shot on target at the San Siro. So it does also, prove how, poor their display was, right? And another thing is that now the second leg will be taking place in Madrid at the Wanda Metropolitano on Wednesday, the 13th of March 2024, and the aggregate winners enter the quarterfinal draw on 15 March, just 2 days afterwards. So, yeah, man, that's all for now, man, from the Champions League, and I'm actually looking forward to Napoli taking on Barcelona tonight, and the other Champions League game will be FC Porto taking on Arsenal, right? So those are the last 2 first leg round of 16 games to actually look forward to, right, in the UEFA Champions League. Hey, man, I hope you loved this video, man, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to mention your own comments, and listen, we'll be in touch pretty soon. Hope you have a good one. Bube Simpatio Mhlaba, football is a religion. Cheers. All right. Greetings to all of y'all. Welcome to another episode of Football is a Religion. As we do conclude the first leg encounters of this season's round of 16, ties in the UEFA Champions League. We did see a clash between 2 of Diego Maradona's former clubs, Napoli taking on FC Barcelona at the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona Stadium in Naples, Italy, right? So I would say it was a pretty much balanced game, even though I think Barcelona really played well in Naples, as they did fight. It was a hard-fought first leg, that actually ended in a draw. So it was a strong team performance and a solid result on the road for FC Barcelona, as well as it was also a good performance from the home side, right? Even though they didn't really show much in the game, but, I would say it was really a strong performance from the away side more, right? Remember, Barca hadn't featured in the knockout stages of the UEFA Champions League in 2 consecutive seasons. So this was the first time in 3 seasons since the departure of their talisman Lionel Messi, right? So Barcelona may have begun their journey in the Champions League knockout stages with a solid result on the road, thanks to a hard-fought, 1-1 draw against Napoli at the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium on Wednesday night, in the first leg of their round of 16 tie. So Barcelona were indeed the better team most of the night, and they earned a 1-goal lead, through solid attacking play. But it was just like one poor defensive moment that cost them a victory. And now the tie is still wide open ahead of the second leg, in 3 weeks' time, right? In Barcelona, right? So I would like us to look at the first 45 minutes of the game, the first half, right? Barcelona made a strong start on the road, quickly establishing themselves in, the Napoli half, moving the ball well between the lines to find spaces inside the host backline, right? So we saw Lamine Yamal, Ilkay Gundogan, they were the biggest threats early on. And when Pedri and Robert Lewandowski got more involved in the Blaugrana attack, Blaugrana became more dangerous up front, right? So for Lamine Yamal, it was actually the first, to test Napoli goalkeeper Alex Meret with a shot from distance. Then Lewandowski had a very good chance inside the area, and Gundogan fired a rocket from the edge of the box, that would have actually found the top corner. But Napoli goalkeeper was on par to actually save that one. It was a great save, because he did make some 3 excellent saves to actually deny the opening goal, right? And the first 30 minutes, belonged to Barca. But the Catalans, they just couldn't find the breakthrough, and Napoli finally managed to get forward, and actually have more of the ball towards the end of the half, right? But the hosts never really came close to making Marc-Andre ter Stegen work. However, Ronald Araujo almost single-handedly, neutralized the threat of Victor Osimhen, while Jules Koundé did a solid job, defending Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, on the wing. So basically, let me put it to you guys like this. The first half, came to an end without a goal, but Barcelona would have been happy, with their work in the opening frame, although they just needed to keep up the good work and be more clinical to find a winning goal in the second 45 minutes of the game. That's exactly what we did see, because you look at the second half, right, the second stanza. Barcelona once again, they started the second half with full control of the ball and forcing Napoli to defend deep inside their half. And Yamal, as well as Gundogan, combined early to actually require another save from Meret as the Catalans continued to create danger. On the right of the hour mark, the visitors finally got the goal they deserved. Which was through a great sequence of long passing, which actually ended with, an outrageous assist by Pedri, through the defender's legs, and a great finish by, Robert Lewandowski, as the Pole found, some space inside the box and fired a powerful shot into the bottom corner to put the away team, in front with only 30 minutes to go from that particular moment in time. And you thought, Barcelona would go on to win the game. But surprisingly, I was just very disappointed with the home team, Napoli, because Napoli, surprisingly, they showed very little urgency. After conceding the opener, they showed very little urgency. They didn't even make a serious effort to commit bodies forward, and they created very little trouble for the Barca defense. And the Blaugrana continued to control the ball, seemingly, cruising towards the finish line. Although with 15 minutes remaining, an unlikely equalizer came against the run of play, as Cameroonian midfielder Zambo Anguissa, played a pass through Victor Osimhen inside the box, and the Nigerian striker outmuscled Inigo Martinez before turning and finding the bottom corner. So Barcelona were heavily affected by Napoli's goal and could no longer control possession, easily losing the ball in the midfield, allowing the host to send more bodies forward and create danger with crosses into the box. So it's just that thing, your team, Barca are just unable to manage games. And it's unlike Barcelona, whenever they're in this, that's the story of their season so far. Whenever they're in control of the game, they just, at that pivotal moment, they give so much away. Because look, a victory away from home would have done so much for them. Going into the second leg, right, at home. And it could have actually been a morale boosting victory for them on the road, because from that particular moment in time, we saw Xavi Hernandez, he brought on Rafinha and João Felix off the bench, looking, to add a bit of spark in attack to create a late chance for a winner. But Blaugrana were unable to break down the Napoli defense, and the final whistle came, to an end, to mark the end, the first leg in a draw, right? So what I can actually say is that Barca played well enough and created enough chances to score, more than just one goal. And the result is not totally satisfying, given the fact that Napoli scored with pretty much their only chance of the entire game. But a draw away in the Champions League knockout stages is never a bad result. And the performance was strong and mature enough to give reason for encouragement ahead of the second leg. So, congrats once again to the away side Barcelona for actually fighting hard. They could have won the game. Also, congrats to Victor Osimhen. I'm sure that's actually a confidence boosting goal for him, getting the equalizer for the home side, right? And the tie is pretty much open. It's pretty much open, right? Even though Barcelona dominated, but we wait to see how the second leg will be, right? What will pan out in the second leg of this particular tie between Barcelona as well as Napoli. It was actually, a great game of football, to say the least. I actually enjoyed the football, but I sincerely believe that Barca could have actually done much better. They could have done much better in terms of managing the game, in terms of actually holding on, to that, that solitary goal that they got, which was, deserved, right? Because, look, if we look at this from this perspective, again, Barcelona really let Napoli off the hook on Wednesday night, because that 1-1 draw, it still leaves the tie very much in balance after the first leg in Italy. And, once again, I don't know how many times I want to say this, but it's funny how football works, because Xavi's side were the better team for long periods of the game, and they fully deserve to go up. 1-0 up when Robert Lewandowski made their dominance count. And for once, Barcelona, had actually started the game strongly and didn't give the hosts a sniff in the first half of the match at the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium. And you look at this again. Barcelona didn't allow the opposition a single first half shot for the first time in a Champions League game since December 2016 against Borussia Mönchengladbach, and for the first time in the knockout stages since May 2011 in the semi-final against Real Madrid. That was basically security. So 0. Records being broken once again. And it shows how solid Barcelona were in this particular encounter against Napoli. The only question seemed to be whether Barcelona could get that vital goal. Lamine Yamal, Ilkay Gundogan, Robert Lewandowski all had chances in the first half but couldn't convert. It looked like, being a similar story after the break until Lewandowski grabbed just his second Champions League goal of the season. And the strike, it basically looked like being the difference between the teams until Victor Osimhen, took advantage of a poor moment from Inigo Martinez and slotted home to actually make it 1-1, right? And Osimhen's goal changed everything, and it means the tie is really up for grabs, because Barca have the home advantage next time out, but, have been better on their travels this season, while new Napoli boss, Francesco Calzona now has a few weeks to work his players before the return. Surprisingly, Barcelona have actually been much stronger on the road than they have been at home, right? Remember, Camp Nou and Luis Acampos Stadium are two different grounds, right? So another question is that Lewandowski, yes, he had a wonderful performance. What a great performance that was, because he got lucky last time out against Celta Vigo, but was on target yet again on Wednesday night with a fine low strike that actually beat Alex Meret in the Napoli goal. Rather amazingly, Lewandowski's goal was Barcelona's first in the Champions League knockout stages since Lionel Messi scored against PSG all the way back in 2021, right? So that was the last time Barcelona were able to find the back of the net in the Champions League knockout stages. So as you look at Robert Lewandowski's performance in this particular encounter, is that the fact that he had 36 ball touches, he scored once, he had 4 shots, only 2 of them were on target, he made 1 key pass, and he won 6 out of 14 duels, and he made 4 clearances, and basically that does guarantee him player of the match, deservedly so, because he was really on song, right? And he scored the pivotal winner. He scored the pivotal goal for Barcelona, which could have been the winning goal, right? So basically, that is a great performance, a decent performance from the Pole. Although, you expect a little bit more. But, we will see if this will actually give him much more confidence going forward, right? And if he can keep up with this momentum from this particular encounter. Because there's been plenty of debate about Lewandowski all season, but he certainly seems to be in very strong goal-scoring form right now, because the Poland international has now scored 5 goals in his last 4 games and 9 since the turn of the year. So signs of life indeed from the veteran striker, and there are still doubts about the rest of his game, but Lewandowski's job first and foremost is to provide goals, and he's certainly doing that right now. And let's look at Osimhen. He did make Barcelona pay, because Osimhen punished Barcelona for missing those chances. Again, in football, that's how it is. If you miss your chances, you will rue them, right? Because Barcelona's defense has been a major problem this season, but looked rock solid. They were very rock solid against Napoli for the majority of the 90 minutes. And Napoli did possess plenty of threat on the night, with Victor Osimhen, Kivichka, Kvaratskhelia, both starting, but struggled to create any real moments of danger. Yet, that always seems, likely to change, particularly with the host chasing an equalizer. It was actually no surprise to see Osimhen get his name on the score sheet, because now Victor Osimhen has scored 6 home goals in the UEFA Champions League with Napoli, and all those goals came in the last 6 home games, joining Lorenzo Insigne in terms of goals in home games, with Partenope in the competition, and only Dries Mertens did better, because Dries Mertens scored 11 goals, home Champions League goals for Napoli during his time in Naples, right? And we also see, like, the disappointment will be that Victor Osimhen scored, with his only chance on goal. And the really disappointing thing is that Inigo Martinez will know that he should have done better in dealing with that, right? In preventing that scenario, because Xavi brought the veteran back into the starting 11 at the expense of Pau Kubarsi, but saw the defender go 2 round far easily after being brushed off by, Osimhen. The Nigerian striker, then showed how dangerous he can be, keeping his composure to actually beat Marc-Andre ter Stegen in the Barcelona goal. And Victor Osimhen now has 9 Champions League goals scored in 16 games, and will obviously be a major threat again in the return leg, because Barca have been warned already that, all they know is that they can't afford to switch off again in the return leg, because if they are to make it through to the quarterfinals, they need to really switch on, and they need to be heavily focused, right? And yeah, man, again, that's just how it is, man. In football, if you don't take your chances, you will be punished. But we did see somebody making history. Again, Lamine Yamal made history for all the right reasons once again, as he made his Champions League debut. So basically, Lamine Yamal, makes Champions League history for Barcelona against Napoli. That is basically another record for the collection for this young teenager, this brilliant teenager, right? Because the Barcelona teenager Lamine Yamal made more history on Wednesday night when he took to the pitch for the club against Napoli in the last 16 of the UEFA Champions League. So the 16-year-old became the youngest player to ever feature in the knockout stages of Europe's Premier Club competition at the age of 16 years old and 223 days. It's yet another record for the talented teenager, who already has plenty under his belt already in his young career. That's why I'm saying you can't put this boy under too much pressure, but he is breaking so many records. He has shown that, look, he can play, he's ready for the high level, right? Because Lamine Yamal, right, again, he has played an integral part in this team, this season, because, he's part of the Barcelona team playing in the knockout stages of a Champions League tie for the first time in 3 years, right? And again, the club will be hoping that, they actually knock out Napoli, in the quarterfinals of the second leg, because they got a draw in the first leg. So basically, they will need to just be more clinical in front of goal and actually improve more on their defensive, displays. So that's it for now. I'm going to head straight to the Porto versus Arsenal game on what transpired between those two teams in Portugal, right? So stay in tune. Stay in tune. So, yeah, the last first leg encounter of the round of 16 UEFA Champions League game was between Porto as well as Arsenal in Portugal. And the Portuguese scoring a last minute winner, to actually win the first leg tie against the Gunners by a goal to nil. So, how can I put this, right? Arsenal was stunned by a very tactically astute FC Porto in their first leg, of the Champions League round of 16, in Portugal, right? Remember the Gunners came into this game full of confidence, ahead of the game, against the Portuguese Giants, as they had scored 11 goals in their two previous games, right? So from this particular moment in time, Porto is in the knockout stages of the UEFA Champions League for a reason, and they showed it as they defended resolutely against the Gunners, who had the bulk of the possession as expected. So the Portuguese side, could have opened the scoring in the 21st minute when Galeno's shot, rattled the crossbar and he put the rebound just wide of the post. And Arsenal continued to search for an opening, but the Porto defense, led by Pepe, was unmovable and defended everything that came at them, right? Tellingly, Arsenal had no shots on target in the entire match, while Porto had two, one of which would become the winning goal as Galeno, scored a goal of the season contender 4 minutes into added time to actually stun Arsenal. And it was actually a tough day in the office for the Gunners, but Porto were very tactically superior. They were very aware of the danger they faced from Arsenal, who have so much work to do at the Emirates if they are to progress to the quarterfinals of this year's Champions League, right? So it was only in halftime, in the tie that I could say that Arsenal were really in the particular, were in particular in the game. But look, they have to prepare well in the second leg if they are to get a result, if they are to progress to the next round of this year's UEFA Champions League, and basically as for Mikel Arteta's men, I don't think they expected the fact that, they were going to be outplayed. They were going to be I don't think they expected the fact that Porto's defense was very rock solid. I thought maybe they were just going to have it easily. But remember, Porto are still also defending champions of this thing. They've won this thing before. They won it in 2004, which is now 20 years to be exact. And remember, Arsenal have never won a Champions League, let alone a Europa League. So Porto are an experienced club when it comes to UEFA competitions. So you can never underestimate them. I still think that, they didn't really deserve to lose the game, against Porto, because Arsenal did so many things right. They did so many things correctly. Yes, Porto is just a tricky opponent to face, especially when you play them in Portugal. But Arsenal did live up to expectations, especially at the back. Even Porto did that, because remember, it was a limited Arsenal, and it was a game that could easily be won by a mistake or a wonder goal, and which is exactly what we saw, because Galeno, scored, from a superb effort to hand the Portuguese side a first leg advantage deep into added time. I don't think there's anything that you can say, to actually discredit Arsenal or criticize them because they did so well. Yes, Arsenal will be able to turn it around in the Emirates, in a few weeks' time. So it's not all too over, but they just need to work harder. They really need to work harder if they are to actually break down this FC Porto defense. Because what I can say is that Porto deserve all the credit. They kept all the Arsenal attackers at bay. They worked really hard to achieve, the result that they got over the 90 minutes. But in my opinion, the tie is far from over. And Arsenal will be facing them at the Emirates, and Arsenal, I'm sure they have taken lessons. They just need to take lessons from this loss, and they need to work on it and actually capitalize on home ground advantage at the Emirates, in the second leg.